So, welcome, my designer friends, to another episode of Design MBA, which is a real life MBA program for designers, where I interview design hustlers so that me and you can learn the skills and mindset necessary to launch our own business venture. So, today I've got a phenomenal guest with me, Rik Lomas. Rik is the founder and CEO of SuperHi, a company that helps creative people all over the world learn the skills they want to learn. Their mission is to provide the highest quality education as accessibly as possible. Over the last 4 years, SuperHi has taught tens of thousands of creative industry professionals in 90 plus countries learn skills such as digital coding and design. SuperHi has grown to be a team spanning 7 countries. Rik wrote the book Learn to Code Now, and you may have watched one of his tutorials on the internet. He also recently featured as a Sour Patch Kid in the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade and is way too old to be posting memes. So, real talk. If you want to learn how to code, how to design, at your own pace, as I call it, you need to head out over to superhi.com. That's superhialtogether.com and check out some of the amazing courses they've got there. So without further ado, Rik, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's been great to be on here.
Hell yeah, man. So tell me about it. Like, what was it? You grew up in the UK, right?
Yeah, originally from Manchester in the UK. Spent a lot of time in London. So straight after college, moved to London, went straight into the creative industry. Really kind of didn't really know what I was doing in the creative industry. I did a math degree. So.
Oh, wow. So real quick, are you a football fan?
I am indeed. Yes.
I'm an Arsenal fan. I got to tell you that up front.
I'm a Manchester United fan. So. It's going to be a bit of a clash today, unfortunately. Yeah. But yeah, so I, lived in London for 10 years. I lived pretty near the Arsenal Stadium actually as well. So I was kind of I was living in Highbury for a little bit. So yeah, lived in London 10 years. Worked in the creative industry for a long time, and then moved to New York a few years ago.
Wow. So you got right into the creative industry. So what was your so you have a math degree, right? So what is a person with a math degree end up in? How does a person like that end up in the creative industry?
Good question. Accidentally. So kind of what happened is I grew up in a poor background, and I didn't have a computer until a lot later than a lot of the people I went to college with. So I didn't have a computer until I was like 16. So when I got a computer at 16, I was like very, very excited about what you could do with it. And, rather than actually going outside and hanging out with friends, I was actually just on the computer all the time because I was excited for this new thing. And over time, I kind of realized how powerful you can make things on a computer. You can make very, very creative things very, very quickly. So when I went to college, I'd already kind of picked to do a math degree, and there wasn't really kind of scope to change that. And even at the time as well, back when I was applying for college, there wasn't things like design degrees in the way that digital was around then. It was kind of like the very early stages. That would have been 2002. So, I'm 36, and that's a kind of back in 2002, there wasn't really web design degrees. Yeah. I mean, there's a few, but it was very low level at that time. So for me, it was kind of like, okay, this is a sensible subject that I'm relatively good at. So I went to do it. And, over the time of my college degree, I didn't really care for the topics. I was kind of bored by it, and I found it very unpractical and very obviously academic. So
I'm very bad at
learning
math.
Things. Well, I mean,
especially calculus.
I'd like to say that I'm good at it because obviously I have a degree in it. But at the same time, it's like I found it very unpractical and very kind of like, why am I learning this? Like, what is the point of me learning number theory or differential systems or all of this kind of topics? I'm like, why am I even here doing this? So whilst I was there, I was just making things on the side and not really paying too much attention to my work. And
so
I was really kind of like websites for friends. I made a little kind of like community site. This was like before Facebook for the people at college, and just little things like that. And basically building up an accidental portfolio of different websites. And these were all kind of like early stage, 2000s websites. All very, very old fashioned nowadays.
And you self-taught yourself coding and all this stuff.
Yeah, and the thing that I kind of found is I got stuck a lot, and what would have taken someone else, a few days to do would have taken me months because I was like, I don't know how to do this. Like, where do I even
And I
find
don't
the
think they
answer
had
for a lot of
Stack
this stuff?
Overflow back in the day.
No, exactly. And that was the kind of thing. It was like, you would literally have to read all the documentation and kind of do it yourself. And there was no one else to really help you out. And there's someone who wasn't in a degree program or someone else who wasn't in
Yeah.
a boot camp. There wasn't really a place to kind of like ask for that help. So for me, it was kind of like, what I wanted to do in my head versus how long it would actually take were completely different. So for me, it was kind of like a bit of a learning experience of, oh, I get stuck a lot and I don't know how
Hmm.
to fix this. And this is kind of what coding must be like. You get stuck all the time. And, there's no way to get help. And, if I have this idea in my head, how do I
Yeah.
explain that and who do I explain it to? So for me, it was kind of like most of my college degree was really spent making an accidental portfolio and getting stuck coding, not really doing math.
Wow. And then, if I'm not mistaken, Harry Potter was shot at your college, right?
Some of it, yeah. I mean, I went to Durham University, which is in kind of like North England, kind of
Yeah.
near Newcastle in England, and yeah, it's famous for its castle and cathedral. So there's
Oh
this
wow.
area in Durham. Durham's quite a posh university, you would call it, and I
Uh
was
huh.
kind of like brought in there on a scholarship, so I was kind of like,
Damn, good
turn
for
up
you,
there
man.
with an accent, and people are like, "Where are you from?" And yeah, it was an interesting experience, and made a lot of good friends there as well. And yeah, it was really fun time.
So you've got this. So you graduated from Hogwarts, if I may.
Yep.
You could say that, and then you got the math degree, and you got this portfolio on the side of freelance projects. So what happened after that? Did you end up joining an agency or a full time job?
So I started applying to places like banks, and the reason for
Okay.
that is because that's what people do who have math degrees. They go into accountancy or basically corporate lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really getting very far with that because it was like I wasn't really doing that well in my degrees, and I had this portfolio, and they didn't really care about that. So basically, a lot of my peers went into these kind of careers, and for me, it was kind of like I was hanging out on this website called News Today, which was back in the day, kind of a design forum in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed there was a job posting from an agency, and I applied to it, and I was kind of like, I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get a job.
Yeah.
And I applied in like the March for starting in maybe like July, and they were like, it's too early. And basically every single job I applied to were like, this is too early. Like we need someone now. We don't need
Oh
someone in
man.
like July. So I was just getting no's, and I was thinking like, okay, I'm getting no's from the banks and the corporate world. I'm getting no's from the creative agency
Yeah.
world. Like, what do I do? Like, do I have a job? And the answer was kind of like no. And basically, the very last one I applied to, which was like a week before, like maybe 2 weeks before college was kind of finishing, they were like, "Oh yeah, come down for an interview in London."
Uh
And
huh.
Newcastle to London, it's about 3 hours on the train. And they were kind of like, "Oh yeah, you sound good. Do you want to come in for a trial, maybe 5-day trial?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "When?" And they were like, "Monday." And I was like, I live in like 3 hours away on train. Like, yes, I'll do it, and kind
Yeah.
of worked it out. And this was like the last week of college, and obviously the last week of college for everyone is usually a party time.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I was like, I can either party for 5 days, or I can do this trial, and fingers crossed, hope for the best they like me.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the trial, and I basically went down to London, stayed in the kind of middle of nowhere, kind of really outside London, and basically was kind of like brought in on the first day to be like, cool, here's a project, make it. And I was
Wow.
like, cool, I get to make things for work, and I'm not getting paid very much, but I'm doing it. And the thing that I was actually making was this current pop stars website, and
Mm-hmm.
I assumed that it was kind of like a fake project, like they designed it for
Yeah.
me and it was a test.
Yeah.
And about a day into this trial, they were like, "Oh no, this is the real site. Like this is
Oh my
going
god.
live on Friday. So if this doesn't go live, then this doesn't go live." And I was a bit like, "Oh shit, the pressure is all of a sudden on me." So goes from just being like a test to being like, "Oh no, this is a real site that needs to be live, and there's a pop star launching an album that needs to go live on Friday."
Wow.
So really kind of thrown into it, and it was interesting. It was kind of like this is kind of what the real world was meant to look like in agency world.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, oh, I'm glad that they've given me this opportunity that I was kind of lucky to get.
And then you got the job. From that point to you joining General Assembly, how did that happen? Or like you're interested in teaching?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of working in agencies for a while. So I worked in agencies for about 3 years, and basically kind of hopped around between a few, and then basically kind of joined a startup in London. This was back in 2008, and this really wasn't a startup scene in
Mm-hmm.
London at all. So I joined this startup, which was basically trying to do kind of like Yelp for the UK, so
Mm-hmm.
business reviews, that kind of thing, and basically kind of came on board, and they were like, we don't have a tech person. We need a tech site. Like, how do we do this? And, from my background, it was kind of like, this is cool because, I don't know the scope of the work.
Yeah.
Usually when you do client work, it's like you're given a project and you do the project and then you pop it out the other end. And
Mm-hmm.
this was kind of like, we don't know what we're doing. We don't know when this is going to end. We don't know the features. We need to work it out. And for me, that was kind of really exciting because all of a sudden you're kind of like thrown into it as a, what am I doing? Like, this is up to me to some degree. So that was really exciting from that point of view. And, basically grew that site quickly, was part of that team, first coder there. And that actually sold to a kind of a radio media group in the end. And they were like,
Mm-hmm.
cool, right, hand that over to the media group. We have this team. What do we do next? And the next site was actually a completely different idea, using a lot of the same kind of principles. So this was kind of like a voucher site, similar to like Retail Me Not or those kind
Mm-hmm.
of things. And again, still early in the UK in the startup scene,
Yeah.
and they were kind of pretty much like, "Oh, we'll do what Retail Me Not are kind of doing for the US in the UK." So we basically started this site called vouchercodes.co.uk, and that grew like really, really quick,
Mm-hmm.
like incredibly quick. Like we were like holding on all the time to like, holy shit, we've got so many people
Yeah.
starting to do this stuff. We had like 8 million people in the UK on the
Damn.
newsletter list, and it's like there's only 60 odd million in the UK. So all of a
Yeah.
sudden, this site, which was just like 18 months old, was getting like millions of views every day. And we were just like, we need to scale up really, really quickly. And for me, what happened was they scaled up quickly, and I was still 25 at the time, not really knowing what I was doing. And as that kind of team grew really, really quickly, I was getting put more and more into a box. And
Yeah.
it was kind of like, you are doing this very defined task now. So what I joined to do was very wide ranging. And over time, it kind of got more and more narrow. And for me, that was kind of a sign that's
Yeah.
like, I actually like that wider thing. So I actually quit to go freelance and basically do this stuff
But what
with
about the equity?
clients. Didn't have any. It did sell though. It sold for like 43 million to Retail Me Not in the end, and
Wow.
it's still growing. It's still really big. So no equity. I got paid well, so I was
I
like,
see.
this is great. I mean, that's the kind of thing. It's like equity wasn't really a thing in London at the time in startup world, and
Uh-huh.
I think that was something that looking back maybe should have changed. But I
I
was
see.
kind of like happy with the pay. Everything's cool. I'm getting paid well to make cool stuff.
Yeah.
So not complaining. And yeah, for me, that was kind of like, really, I don't know, it was still enjoyable. And I think as we kind of grew, it just got more narrow. So I was
Yeah.
like, this is me. This isn't the company. No problems with the company. I
Mm-hmm.
liked everyone there, but it was time to kind of change.
Leave.
And
Yeah.
that was kind of like the real move into freelance and basically doing freelance for early stage startups. So, people who had no idea what they were doing,
Yeah.
basically who were like, I've got this great idea. How do I do it?
Yeah.
So, I joined at those kind of early stages to basically frame how those kind of
Mm-hmm.
startups worked and basically get them live and to the point where they could actually grow a team and hand it over. So that was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like what I was doing. And then obviously as I was kind of doing that, I kind of got an email from General Assembly being like, hey, we're starting up here in the UK, in
Yeah.
London. We're looking for teachers. And basically got interviewed to teach there. And, it felt very similar to what I was doing on the freelance side of things,
Yeah.
basically helping these people have this vision of what they want in mind and being able to do it.
And what year was that? Do you remember?
That would have been 2012 or 2011, actually. Yeah.
So 2011, 2012, you're teaching at General Assembly.
Yeah.
What gave you the itch that maybe I need to branch off and start my own design education company?
So I started at General Assembly. I was like one of the first teachers there,
Mm-hmm.
doing the front end course and also the Ruby on Rails course as well. I was also teaching a lot of the kind of like weekend courses too. So I did a course in UX and a few design courses as well. And what I kind of felt was like, I joined this General Assembly in London. They just started there, like to the point where they had no tables and chairs in the room. Like they were, that's how new they were. So we were like getting chairs from the offices nearby to basically just sit people around. And basically, you know, kind of was like, this is a scrappy startup. I really like this kind of feel. And as I kind of like did the longer form courses, I was given a syllabus, and it was kind of like, you're teaching this.
Yeah.
And for me, I was kind of like, well, this syllabus is okay. It works on a general level, where if you're teaching lots of different types of people, this is the kind of like, you know, consensus syllabus.
Yeah.
And when I was teaching teaching students, there was a total range of people in there, from, you know, people who were like artists who wanted to make, you know, exhibition type websites on the web, to people who are like, oh, I'm a gambler and I want to automate all this stuff. And you're like trying to teach the same thing to all these different types of people. And what I kind of noticed was the people who got the furthest in these courses were the people who were the most creative people, who were probably doing this as part of their job. You know, they made things every single day. So when they were making things in design, it was very easy to get them to actually convert that design to code, because they were very used to making things. So for me, it was kind of like seeing who got the best outcomes, and, you know, really kind of saying, maybe I should try and change the syllabus somewhat. So I told General Assembly, like, hey, can we change the syllabus and make it so it's a little bit more, you know, focused towards these people? And they were like, no. And, you know, looking
the franchisee
back,
model.
Yeah, and I see why. And, you know, the reason why I see why is because, you know, those kind of models where you're doing brick and mortar kind of places where you're getting a teacher in to teach things, sometimes you don't know if that teacher's any good. And if you're having that syllabus, which is like, we're keeping this as it is, you know, you're keeping that quality in the middle, because if there's bad teachers, they have to teach this thing too. So I totally understand like why they did that, because I could have been a terrible teacher, and, you know, there's all of a sudden me messing around with the syllabus, and they're like, no one's getting any good outcomes from this. So I totally understand why they did that. But for me, it was kind of like frustrating from that point of view of like, you know, we're not getting the best outcomes. Like I know the way that I would actually teach this, and it's not the same way. So for me, it was kind of the moment of like, how do we do this? And, you know, my background at the time was like, you know, I was teaching, I was working on early stage startups, and it was like, maybe we'll put the two things together. Like, maybe I'll do the teaching, but I also know how to start things up to some degree as well. So that was kind of like the logical moment for me, in terms of like, how do we combine these two things together and make something new?
Wow. And that led to your first startup that you started?
Yeah. So from the first startup, my first startup was called Steer. It's basically a coding school in London. Basically, it's a game, you know, brick and mortar kind of business. Had a classroom that we would teach in. Did things very, very, very scrappily. You know, in the same way as kind of like General Assembly got tables and chairs from other offices. We did the same. It was kind of like, how do we do this in the kind of like most natural
They're
way?
probably like, this guy's every day on Monday asking for chairs.
I'm just like the chair collector. I'm just bringing chairs in from everywhere. And, you know, from my point of view, it's kind of like, you know, you have this fresh start where you can basically make it your own and kind of go, what does this startup even look like? Who are we aiming it for? Like, how much should these courses cost? Obviously, you kind of have things like, you know, how much rent is and how much salaries are, but you're kind of like having a bit of choice on who you're aiming at as well. So for me, it was kind of like going from this very wide range where we were trying to teach artists, gamblers, fintech people, into kind of narrowing that a little bit further down into how do we teach people who are very creative the skills they actually need to do. And that's kind of where it first came from. Like, Steer was trying to be like, how do we bring these people in who are very creative in this classroom environment
Well, why narrow
to
down?
learn the things that, and learn the things they want to learn, and try to do it as quickly as possible as well. So, you know, the courses that we did was somewhere between like 3 and 5 days. People would come into the office, 10 a.m., leave at 5 p.m., and, you know, they'd get this kind of like intensive, quick way of learning.
Why did you narrow down on focusing on creative people and not try to focus on everybody, like the gamblers, the footballers, everybody?
I mean, for me, I think it's really hard to kind of teach everyone the same thing. And I think there's this almost like breakdown in how people learn. And, you know, people have very different ways of learning. You know, and also people have very different outcomes of what they want as well. So for me, it was kind of like seeing I was trying to teach the same topic to different types of people with
Yeah.
different outcomes. That it wasn't really for anyone, and that for me is a bit of a kind of like,
Ah.
who's this for? Who's the audience? Who's going back to user research? It's
Yeah.
like when I was doing that with early startups, it was kind of like, who's this for? Like, it can't be for everyone. And, that was something that I would drill into these early stage startups. Like, you're not trying to be something for everyone. Like, have some kind of like persona in
Yeah.
mind. And for me, it was kind of like the persona was people who were creative and
Yeah.
people who, and I know that's a kind of like, who isn't creative, but it's the people who are like in the creative industry who are making things, who want to get into that field as well. I think most people have some creativity, of
Yeah.
course, but I think, the people who get the most from it are the ones that are doing it all day at the moment.
Got it. And then you have Steer that's going on. That's basically an in-person boot camp that's teaching creative people how to code. Why did you pivot from that or go from Steer to SuperHi?
So basically, as we started to scale up Steer, me and my co-founder had a lot of disagreements on how we do that.
I see.
For me, it was kind of like, we were seeing people come in from a long distance to come to these classes. We
Yeah.
were getting people from flying in from Denmark and France and Scotland
Wow.
just to come to these courses for like 3 days. And it was like, that's a great compliment in terms
Mm-hmm.
of like, people are willing to travel and stay in London and do these courses. And, we were getting a bit of a real kind of like people asking for, is there a steer in this city? Is there a steer in France? Is there a steer
Mm-hmm.
in, these other locations? And me and my co-founder were like, cool, that's great. Like we could scale this up, but how do we do that? Like she wants to go very brick and mortar in terms of like, okay, we're getting people from Denmark come in. Let's do it in Denmark and France
Yeah.
and all these other places. And for me, it was kind of like, you know, these people are learning these skills on the internet and they're basically they're traveling to London and it's a long way to come to
Yeah.
learn these skills. And it feels a bit like they're forced into coming that distance rather than
Ah.
it be that like, how do we make this really, really accessible? Like, we obviously have rents to pay. You
Yeah.
have to be in the city. You have to be in like a London or a New York to do
Yeah.
this stuff. You have to spend time as part of the day to come along to these courses.
Collect the chairs.
You have to collect the chairs. There has to be a teacher doing the stuff in front of you.
Yeah.
I was teaching, every single day pretty much.
Oh
And,
man.
I'd get to the point where I was like, repeat myself because I'm doing the same course every other
Damn.
week. So, it turned into a bit of like a stand-up set because I was doing the same jokes at the same
Oh
point.
my god.
I had a teaching assistant who would like roll their eyes at the same joke because they'd heard it 14 times,
Yeah.
but the students hadn't. So,
Yeah.
for me, it was like, I'm feeling like I'm repeating myself. Doing these things in other places is repeating itself as
Yeah.
well. It's not that scalable, but it's also not that accessible as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, for me, it was kind of like, why don't we do this online? Like, it makes more sense to actually try and do this in an online way. And I get the kind of reasoning for like wanting to be in a classroom with people because it's
Mm-hmm.
social and
Yeah.
you have someone to talk to and you don't want it to just feel like a bunch of YouTube videos. And,
Mm-hmm.
I see the kind of like reasoning for online learning a lot of the time feeling like that. And that was something that, when I started SuperHi, it was like, how do we take this kind of like in-person classroom environment
Mm-hmm.
and really translate it online so that it isn't just like, it's not cold, but it's still accessible. It's still high quality teaching. You get access to teachers who are smart and intelligent. And yeah, I think that was something that was really kind of a driver for like starting this. It was like looking at the environment out there and saying,
Mm-hmm.
that really isn't a place that I'd send someone online that would actually be really high quality creative education.
So I'm assuming you left Steer and split
Yep.
ways with a co-founder. But then what
Yep.
year was it when you started SuperHi?
So split with Steer was in 2014 and
Mm-hmm.
basically did freelance for a few years just to kind of like top up the bank balance a little bit after doing a lot of
Yeah.
startups for a while. Moved to the US in 2016. My
Okay.
wife got a job at NYU, so I
Mhm.
got dragged along as I could do, and started SuperHi in like October 2016. It would have been. So that was just like
Wow.
when the company like was registered. Took a bit of time to actually kind of like do the first online courses and scale it up. But yeah, bootstrapped it to begin with. Got to a point where I was doing freelance work and SuperHi at the
Yeah.
same time, and then eventually got to enough sales that I could actually do it full time.
Wow. Now, the first couple of courses in SuperHi, it was just you. Like you were just the sole person that was making all the courses and selling it, right?
So to begin with, we had other people on board. Like I was actually doing freelance work to bring other people on the team so that
I
they could
see.
actually like make courses with me. So I was basically like doing freelance work to pay other people to like help with the courses. I
Damn,
was also doing
that's true
some in
hustle.
person. Yeah, and it was kind of like the way to pay the bills, really. And
Yeah,
I kind of felt like what is the best way to do this? And it's like I can't just quit my job and just like start doing
yeah,
this on my own and like I will have no money and it's a bit of a risk. The way
yeah.
to de-risk that was really, there's two ways to de-risk that. One is you raise some investment, or
Yep,
two, you have an income source that is different to that.
yep.
So for me, it was like, being a developer and at the time being fairly senior, it was kind of like this is an easier income source than it would be
Hmm.
to raise tons of VC and kind of fingers crossed and hope for the best.
Now, your approach to make this scalable and accessible was to record these
Yeah.
videos in a course format so anybody can watch it. Another way is to just do it live, like
Yeah.
live cohort where every class is live and you teach live. There's no pre-recorded video. So how did you, between the two options, decide that, okay, I think a better idea is just to pre-record the video content and then offer it to the students?
It really came back to the again scalability. What we kind of saw is like, I think there's a bit of a need. There's a bit of time involved in terms of like having to do the Zoom kind of approach where people are like watching a live instructor. Like you have to carve out time to actually be able to do that. And I was teaching a general assembly in the evenings. I was doing like 7 till 9 classes.
Yeah.
So when I was kind of like doing these classes, there'd be people who've been working from 8 till 6, going to do 7 till 9. It's a 13-hour day, and
Damn.
watching these people kind of like, I've had people fall asleep in my classes, and it's probably not just from me teaching, but mainly just from like
Yeah.
exhaustion. It's a long day, and I think having that time to carve out is kind of up to that person, and it makes it more accessible if they can watch it whenever they need to or whenever they
Hmm.
want to, rather than it be like you need to be in this class at a certain time between this and this time.
Yeah.
Like it's less accessible. And for me, it was kind of like the ability to let people rewatch things or like come back at a certain point, and really kind of like being able to take this idea of like doing these classes is everyone learns it in a different way. Like
Yeah.
some people want to do like an hour a night. Some people want to binge 4 hours at the weekend.
Yeah.
We want to kind of like make it fit them rather than like them fitting us. And I think that's kind of why really try to want to do recorded.
And I mean, you are a CEO of the company SuperHi. At the same time, you're also involved making courses. There's a lot of videos of you in the courses. So I guess I have two questions. I'll start with the first one is why not separate yourself from the teaching aspect where you just become the operator running the business and growing it and you just hire a bunch of other people to kind of like make the courses versus you also being involved in the course planning and designing and actually making the course?
I mean, that is happening. I mean, we do have teachers on board, and we've just hired some more teachers to come on board pretty soon.
Hmm.
So one thing that I like teaching, like I like
Yeah.
doing the product side of things, and I think there's still, I think as companies grow, I think there's two types of companies. One where the founders still stay really involved with the product,
Yeah.
and ones where it's like they separate themselves out. And I think the companies that do the best from my from my perspective
Yeah.
are the ones that are still involved in the product. It doesn't mean that they're like literally making the product, but
Yeah.
I like doing that still. And I think that's not trying to be arrogant and be like I'm the best teacher in the world, but I think having seen the experience of like being through lots of different kind of ways of teaching, I think my experience is still very valuable, even for other people making these courses that we work with. So I
Hmm.
think it's a bit of a mix of reasons. Like, I like doing a bit of everything as well. And I think that comes back from that early stage startup mentality of like, you get your hands dirty on
Yeah.
everything. And, it's not just like you do just one thing. When I was put into that narrow box, it was
Yeah.
kind of like, I don't really like being in that narrow box. So, I think it's like having that, I never try and be like a micromanager and be
Hmm.
like, you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong. But it's more that kind of like, how do we make things better in all these different places?
Wow. The funny thing is, I've had Mills on
Yeah.
the show last week, and Us to Adventure also invested in SuperHi. So I'm curious,
Yeah.
like, how did that investment happen? Did you reach out to Mills, or he reached out to you? How did that all happen?
So we've actually taken like two small rounds of investment in the past. So the first one that we did was back in 2017. We got to a point of being bootstrapped, but we've kind of seen the potential of doing more things. And with the time, it was me and then three part-time people. And I was kind of like, these part-time people are like working really, really hard. Like we want to bring them on full
Yeah.
time. So we actually went through XPER's accelerator program, which was in New York.
Hmm.
And, at the time the team was remote. So I was actually the only person in the New York office. And yeah, it was like a really good experience. We had really hands-on support from these, amazing product people like Naveen, who started Foursquare,
Oh my God.
Vitor. Yeah,
Damn.
Vitor, who was like first designer at Twitter. All these kind of great product people who could like bounce ideas off. And it's like that
Wow.
was I know that the money definitely helps, but having that help on terms of products as well to basically be like,
Yeah.
what do you think of this idea? And them having grown really, really big companies to be like, this sucks or this makes sense. I want people to tell me if things suck. And I
Yeah.
think those people would definitely say that. So, that was kind of like, I was always like 20/80 on taking any investment. And the reason I took it was mainly that support from those people.
Hmm.
And they were kind of very open to giving that support. So, we kind of said to them like, hey, we don't really need the cash. Like we're growing, we're bootstrapped from to begin with. Like we don't technically need this, but we want this. And I think it's always a good position to be when you want to take on that investment rather than
Yeah.
you need to.
Hmm.
And the reason we kind of like did a round with us to adventure was the same kind of thing. It was like we got to a point where we were doing mainly code courses, and we were seeing so much demand for other courses in design, project management, that kind of thing, that we were like, we can't do it just on our own. It'll take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So we'll reach out to some people that we like. We know the Us2 gang quite well. So we said to them like, hey, we're thinking of doing this. What do you think? And like, it kind of came from that really. So yeah, I mean, we've been mainly working with Mills and Justin at Us2 as well, and Neef, who've been really, really hands-on. Again, tons of help and tons of like strategic help as well. So yeah, they've been really, really handy and really kind of like great people to work with.
Oh, that's amazing. So it's like if you ask for advice, you'll get the investment money. If you ask for investment money, you'll get
A,
advice. So
a little. I mean, it was not. We kind of said like, this is what we kind of wanted to do, and this is how much money we need. So we were very much kind of thinking around, how do we do this in the best possible way?
mhm.
Like we could have done it in the kind of way of like, we just take longer, and it naturally scales up, and
Yeah.
that's kind of what we want to do. So we could have done that, and I felt like we're not one of these companies that have raised like millions and millions of investment. Like there's definitely companies out there that have, and we see the kind of like downfalls of raising like too much too
Yeah.
quickly, and puts people in a trap. And I think that's something that we were very aware of. Is like education just takes a naturally long time to do,
Hmm.
and that's partly because people learn over a longer period than them buying a product in the same way. So for us it was kind of like, we want this to be sustainable for the long term, and we're not going to do something that like puts us in a box where we have to scale for
Grow. Yeah.
scaling's sake. So yeah, I think it came from that really.
Now I'm just thinking about this, and I absolutely agree with you that taking VC money comes with a whole set of other responsibilities that you got to grow
Yeah,
at a certain amount. If you don't grow, then there's all these people you got to answer to.
yeah,
One of the things I like about a core principle, if you may, that I've seen from just researching on SuperHi is you have this concept of ASAP support, as soon as possible support.
yeah.
So how do you, first of all, like actually implement that? It sounds good on paper, like, oh, if you have a question, you can just, get support immediately. So how do you make that support sustainable over the long term and not just something you do in the initial years of the startup, like handwritten notes and
Yeah.
stuff, that it disappears? So how do you actually manage that?
So one thing that this is kind of going back to my early teaching days, but one thing that we saw that didn't really work when I was teaching was there wasn't really great tools for beginners. And
Hmm.
the reason for thinking like that is almost like when you're learning to code, the tools that you get when you learn to code are generally aimed at people who are intermediate and advanced level. So rather than this kind of being a fix from a kind of like, we're trying to get people to learn these new tools, wouldn't it be great if there was this kind of like tool that was kind of dangerous in terms of like it's not trying to be a Squarespace or a
Yeah.
Webflow, but instead it's kind of like having these augmented layers on top from a product point of view of teaching and like making people realize where they're going wrong. So, for our code courses and the beginner code courses, especially, we built our code editor from scratch. And that basically tells people when they're going wrong. It helps them fix their own mistakes. So the questions that we generally get going forwards are not the kind of questions of like, my code's broken.
Yeah.
When I'm teaching in person, if someone's code's broken, the way you fix that is you go over and stop the class and then fix that person's error.
Yeah.
And then you start the class again. And then you fix someone else's error and you start the class again. So these 2-hour classes I used to teach could easily have been like 40, 50-minute classes just from the interruptions. And it's like, if you have that fixed with product, then you can learn a lot quicker because you're fixing your own mistakes. So the questions that we generally get now are more bigger conceptual things around like, how do I do this thing on this website? How do I do this effect in my head? So kind of going back to what we were saying with the early stage startups, it's like, I have a thing in my head that I want to make. How do I do that? So it's not the kind of things around like, my code is broken, I missed a semicolon out. It's the things of like, I want to learn how to make this thing. And those are the things we can actually like help support with, because those things can't be automated. And that's the thing that we actually do more support on. The things that can be automated, we try to automate as much as possible. It's never over. There's always things we can do in terms of making that better. But I think from a kind of like education point of view, there really isn't many products out there that think of these things from a product standpoint. They think of it from a design, education standpoint and a content standpoint. But there really isn't anything that's kind of like, how do we fix learning to code from a product standpoint? Like, I can't really think of many other places that do that. So, from our point of view, it's like, we want to get people as quickly as possible learning these skills. It doesn't necessarily have to be VS Code or Atom. They want to be dangerous and they want to like make things really, really quickly. We can build it with products. We can help, we have a dev team that actually make products and, really kind of like help people get to the goal of what they want to do, which is building that thing in their head.
I love this, man. Like baking automation into the product itself will reduce all the support tickets and support requests. But now for the other questions, that's not about, it's a code issue, but more about, I have this background. How do I, present myself in the interview? Like things that can be automated because they're vary from case to case basis. So for that, they might just hit you up via a direct message on Slack or any of those communication tools. So in this case, you're probably hit up with so many DMs, man, from all these people. So how do you manage that?
I love it. It's great. I mean, I want to help people get better at their careers. And that's, the whole point of doing SuperHi is like, how do we get those people to do the things that they want to do? And if that's something that I can help with in an interview, or if it's like resume reviews or, a feedback on their portfolio or whatever it is, that's the kind of the point of us doing the things we want to do. So, for us, it is part of the mission. It's not just buying videos or buying a course. It's like having that holistic help that is going to that next stage. Like, we don't promise people like you will get a job after this course, because I think those places kind of bullshit that through. And
the job guarantee.
Yeah, and then you've seen a lot of places lie about it, even places that get fined for kind of making up stats. And it's like, we don't want to promise people those jobs, because in the end, it's really about the work that someone puts in. Like, we're willing to kind of work with those people to get to that point, but really, it's kind of like, it's kind of up to you in the end to kind of like get to that point. And we want to help as much as possible with that. So we want to get people to the point that they can apply for these jobs at the places they want to apply to and get those jobs as well.
Now, do you think about, like, let's say you have 6 DMs that say, how do you create a resume for a developer, for example, and you've seen it 6 to 10 times. Do you think that, maybe I should automate this by just creating a video that people can watch so you don't have to repeat yourself again and again?
So I think not everything can be fixed with content only, because I think it's very specific to those people. And, what people have in mind is very context driven on where they are in their careers, location, even just kind of, I don't know. It's just very kind of dependent on that person.
True.
And I think what help we give is very kind of context driven as well. And, we want it to be very, very helpful for them, obviously, but, at the same time, we want to make sure that, what we give is really, really high quality advice. And something that we think about a lot is like, we don't want to give this kind of like Simon Cowell level brutal British advice. I know that I'm British, so kind of leaning into that. But at the same time, we don't want it to be like this surface level niceness where it's kind of like, looks great, off you go into the world. And it's like,
Yeah.
actually, there's things that they could fix. So we always think about this kind of like honest feedback system where it's kind of like, we're not trying to be brutal. We're not
Yeah.
trying to be overly nice. We're actually giving people these points to actually get better at their careers and things that they can fix as well. So, that's something that we're really kind of like keen on doing is like, we're not trying to like knock people down, but at the same time, we're not trying to like just,
Yeah.
say nice things to them. We everyone wants that feedback and everyone kind of craves that feedback, especially when they're early in their careers, or especially trying to do something new. And we want to give them that help. And, we want to feel like there's a place that they can ask that help.
One thing I really admire about you, man, is in looking from your background. What I mean by that is the background in your screen.
Literally.
And what you talked about is you are not addicted to that hustle porn or hustle mania. And for people who are wondering what is hustle porn, it's this kind of perpetuated by Gary Vee and this thing where you have like posters like hustle till your eyes bleed, hustle till your hands are numb, hustle till you crash down on your sofa. So how did you overcome that addiction to hustle?
I don't know, actually. I think from my background, I think the hustle thing is very kind of like tied into things like capitalism and very kind of like driven by like, growing and making money and, just kind of being better than other people. And I think what we kind of really think about is like how we help people. And that doesn't really tie very closely with that kind of like capitalist thing. We don't really think ourselves as like individuals in the community, even though everyone's trying to like do similar goals. And what we see in the community right now is very kind of like people helping each other out. Like I think at other places people don't help each other out as much because it's competition, and for us we don't see it as competition in the creative space because I think it's almost like we want other people to be doing the best that they can be doing. If it's not with us and there's a better place for them to learn, that's totally okay with me. Like I don't think of it as kind of like one thing will kind of like take over everything else in the world and be like the one size fits all place. And I think that's true of any education. There's someone going to Oxford versus RISD, like they're very, very different.
Yeah.
They're both great, but they're for different people. And I think that's something that we think about a lot is like, I think this hustle porn comes from this idea of like, we're going to take over everything else and like be the best and be the only thing that people go to. And for me, it's like, it's a bit unrealistic as well. Like, there's definitely places, I'd give shout outs to other companies doing good things. And, I'm very kind of happy to do that. So, if people are doing good stuff in other companies that might be competing for the stuff that we're doing, I'm happy to give them shout outs rather than like trying to take them down.
So
I think it's from that. Yeah.
So as a CEO, you don't like embody the hustle porn where you're just like working till you like just fall down. Your wife is like, what is going on, Rik?
I mean, that's the thing. It's like I used to be in this kind of like, especially in the early days, this kind of like work all the time, like every single hour. What I would have is my laptop open when I was watching TV, and when I was doing things on intercom on a help chat, like I would be answering every single support in the evenings, and this would be up to like midnight every day. I'd get up at 8 a.m., do the same thing again.
Did you get burned out?
Yeah, a little bit. And I think it was getting to the point where I was kind of like, I had the intercom app on my phone, but then also on my Apple Watch. So if I was at a bar, I'd be getting my phone out and answering like customer support questions while I was having like dinner with my wife. And it was kind of like, okay, this probably isn't too healthy in the long term, and it's not scalable. Like, I won't be doing this forever, I hope. And we basically, hired some really good customer support people, put some rules in place around support as well, so that people weren't just like expecting answers instantly. Like we try to do it as soon as possible, but not like instant. And I think there's like books that, the Basecamp or the crew have kind of written, which kind of like summarize that up pretty well. Like, there is that kind of point where it's like you need that time to think, you need that time to actually relax and do things that aren't just work all the time. And I think over time I've actually kind of like reduced the amount of hours that I've worked, and that's part of like the business growing up, I suppose, and me growing up to some degree. And yeah, I think it's just more thinking around like, how do we do this in a sensible way that isn't going to encourage burnout as well?
Wow. I mean, it's really hard. It's not that easy because it's your baby. You want to like pour every effort into it.
Yeah.
But I also believe that when I unplug away, so I've now recorded all my interviews for all of 2021.
Yep.
And I was on this like binge, like I got to record, and I was having 3, 4 interviews a week. And I think most people don't realize that when you're interviewing someone, it's actually really taxing on you because you got to like
Oh
really
yeah.
be there. I got
Yep.
to listen to you to follow up with interesting comments or steer the conversation. It's not
Yep.
like, here's a list of questions, let's run it down. I don't think people are going to like to listen to that. So
Yeah.
I had this burnout point where I think a couple of weeks ago where I said, you know what? I think this is enough.
Yeah.
Now let me just like take some time away, do some other things, recharge, and then I can come back to it like some mid next year to start recording season 3
Yeah.
for the podcast.
I mean, you'd see it on things like YouTube as well. Like YouTube creators have this kind of like mindset of like, we need to keep creating and, we'll lose the audience if we
Daily
don't like make
content.
things, and it has to be daily and it has to be, it has to be there. And I think,
Yeah.
when people actually kind of like take a step back and go, actually, maybe it doesn't need to be this, then what they generally kind of find is things stay the same. And I think that's something that, now that I'm even like doing less hours, still a lot of hours for most people, and I'm still thinking about it outside of work and, when I'm sleeping and that kind of thing. But I think at the same time, it's more helpful because I'm actually kind of like, as Mills would say, marinating on those things rather than it be, something that's like, I need to do this right away.
Yeah.
It gives you that time and space to actually think about things. And that's, I think, is the most useful thing really, is like time and space to actually, make things better and think about different ways of making that better rather than the first thing that comes to hand.
Hell yeah, man. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
How can people follow you or contact you?
So obviously I'm on all of the SuperHi channels. I do a lot of the social media stuff still. So if you see any of the social medias on SuperHi, at Twitter, on Instagram, I'm still fairly involved with those. I'm also at Rik Lomas on most channels. So RIK Lomas, LOMAS. And yeah, like email as well, rik@superhi.com. Love to talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rik, for coming on the show, man. It's been a blast.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.